Have you ever wondered why you can know that you deserve better and still accept less? You tell yourself to love yourself. You repeat positive affirmations. You try to think positively. You remind yourself that you are worthy. And yet, sometimes you still say yes when you desperately want to say no. You keep explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. You keep giving chances to someone who keeps hurting you. You keep putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own. So perhaps the question isn't simply, do I love myself? Maybe the deeper question is, do I respect myself? Because self-love and self-respect are connected, but they are not the same thing. And understanding the difference can completely change the way you live. Self-love is something we hear about everywhere. Love yourself. Choose yourself. Believe in yourself. Take care of yourself. And those messages matter. But sometimes self-love becomes something we feel we should have, while self-respect becomes something we actually practice. You may not feel confident every morning. You may have days when you don't like what you see in the mirror. You may question your abilities. You may make mistakes. You may feel uncertain about your future. But even on those days, you can still choose to treat yourself with dignity. That is where self-respect begins. And today, we're going to look at the difference between self-love and self-respect. Which one should come first? And how developing both can change your relationships, your decisions, your confidence, and ultimately, your life. What is self-love? Let's start with self-love. Self-love is the relationship you have with yourself. It means recognizing that your value isn't determined by your appearance, your income, your relationship status, your achievements, or someone else's opinion of you. Self-love says, I am worthy of kindness, even when I am imperfect. It allows you to rest without feeling guilty. It allows you to forgive yourself for mistakes. It allows you to acknowledge your emotions instead of constantly pretending you're fine. It means taking care of your mind, your body, your energy, and your dreams. But here's where things get interesting. You can say you love yourself and still repeatedly behave in ways that betray yourself. You can post an affirmation saying, I know my worth, and then spend hours trying to convince someone else of it. You can tell yourself, I deserve better, and then continue accepting behavior that makes you feel small. You can say, I love myself, while constantly abandoning your own needs to keep everyone else comfortable. That's why self-love alone isn't always enough. Because love is an emotion. Self-respect is a decision. What is self-respect? Self-respect means you recognize your own value, and your actions reflect that recognition. It doesn't mean thinking you're better than other people. It doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean refusing to forgive. And it certainly doesn't mean becoming selfish. Self-respect is much quieter than that. It sounds like, I don't have to prove myself to everyone. I can say no without writing an entire explanation. I can walk away from what repeatedly disrespects me. I can admit when I'm wrong without believing I'm worthless. I don't have to betray myself just to keep someone else. That's self-respect. And here's something important. Self-respect often shows up in the moments when nobody is watching. When you keep the promise you made to yourself. When you stop checking someone's social media because you know it only disturbs your peace. When you finally apply for the opportunity you've been afraid to pursue. When you stop postponing your own life. When you choose rest instead of constantly running yourself into exhaustion. When you stop begging for attention that should be freely given. Those aren't just acts of confidence. They're acts of self-respect. So which one comes first? Self-respect or self-love? Which one comes first? The honest answer is, they strengthen each other. But if you're struggling to build both, I would start with self-respect. Why? Because you don't have to feel worthy before you can start treating yourself as worthy. You can begin with your behavior. Imagine someone who doesn't feel confident enough to leave an unhealthy situation. They may not wake up one morning suddenly overflowing with self-love, but they can make one decision. I will no longer participate in something that repeatedly destroys my peace. That decision is self-respect. And something interesting happens afterward. Every time you keep a boundary, every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you choose what is healthy instead of what is familiar, you send yourself a message. I can trust myself. And self-trust creates confidence. Confidence strengthens self-love. So sometimes you don't wait until you love yourself enough to change your life. You change the way you treat yourself, and your feelings begin to catch up. The 4 places self-respect changes your life. Let's look at 4 areas where self-respect can completely change your life. Number 1, your boundaries. A boundary isn't a punishment. It isn't revenge. It's simply a decision about what you will and will not participate in. You don't need to convince someone that your boundary is reasonable. You don't need a 10-minute explanation. Sometimes, "No, I can't do that," is enough. And sometimes the most powerful boundary isn't something you say. It's something you stop doing. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop responding to every provocation. You stop trying to earn basic respect. That's self-respect. Number 2, your relationships. The way you value yourself influences what you tolerate. When you're terrified of losing someone, you may tolerate things you wouldn't normally accept. You may keep giving chances because being alone feels scarier than being mistreated. But self-respect asks a different question. Not, how do I make them stay? But, is this relationship healthy for me? That's a completely different mindset. You stop measuring the value of a relationship only by how badly you want it. You start looking at how it actually makes you feel. Do you feel respected? Can you communicate honestly? Can you be yourself? Is there mutual effort? Is there room for your needs too? Because love without respect can become exhausting. Number 3, your goals. Self-respect isn't only about relationships. It also affects your dreams. Every time you tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it when I'm ready. I'll try when I become more confident. I'll do it when everything is perfect," you may be postponing your own life. Self-respect means taking your dreams seriously enough to act on them. Not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently. If you say you're going to spend 30 minutes learning something, show up. If you say you're going to work on your health, take the next healthy step. If you say you're building a dream, give it time and effort. Because every promise you keep to yourself builds self-trust. And every promise you repeatedly break teaches you the opposite. Number 4, your inner voice. This one is easy to overlook. Listen to the way you talk to yourself. Would you speak to someone you love the way you sometimes speak to yourself? Would you call them stupid because they made a mistake? Would you tell them they'll never succeed? Would you criticize their appearance every time they looked in the mirror? Probably not. So why make yourself the exception? Self-respect means correcting yourself without destroying yourself. You can say, "I made a mistake," without saying, "I'm a failure." You can say, "I need to improve," without saying, "I'm not good enough." You can acknowledge where you are, while still believing you can become more. The quiet test of self-respect. Here's a simple test. Think about something you've been tolerating that you know isn't good for you. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's constantly comparing yourself with other people. Maybe it's saying yes when you mean no. Maybe it's endlessly waiting for someone's approval. Maybe it's abandoning your goals whenever life becomes difficult. Now ask yourself, if I truly respected myself, what would I do differently? Don't think about what would make someone else happy. Don't think about what would make you look good. Don't think about what other people expect. Ask, what would self-respect look like here? Maybe it would be saying no. Maybe it would be leaving. Maybe it would be apologizing. Maybe it would be starting. Maybe it would be resting. Maybe it would be asking for help. Maybe it would simply be stopping the constant criticism inside your own head. You don't need to change your entire life today. You need to make one decision that your future self will thank you for. Self-love after self-respect. And this is where self-love becomes much deeper. Because when you repeatedly treat yourself with respect, something begins to change. You start trusting your own decisions. You become less desperate for external approval. You become more comfortable saying no. You stop confusing attention with love. You stop believing that being needed is the same as being valued. And slowly, you begin to feel safer within yourself. That's self-love. Not just looking in the mirror and saying positive words. Not pretending everything is perfect. Not forcing yourself to feel confident every day. Real self-love can be much quieter. It can sound like, I don't have to be perfect to deserve kindness. I can grow without hating who I am today. I can want more for my life without believing my current life has no value. I can release what isn't right for me without becoming bitter. And perhaps most importantly, I can choose myself without becoming cruel to anyone else. The biggest misunderstanding. There is one final misunderstanding about self-respect that I want you to leave behind. Self-respect doesn't mean you will never feel hurt. It doesn't mean rejection won't affect you. It doesn't mean you'll never miss someone who wasn't good for you. It doesn't mean you'll never doubt yourself. You are human. You will have difficult days. Self-respect simply means that your difficult emotions don't get to make every decision for you. You can miss someone and still know they aren't right for you. You can be afraid and still take the next step. You can feel insecure and still refuse to accept disrespect. You can make a mistake and still continue forward. Strength isn't the absence of difficult emotions. Strength is learning not to let those emotions decide your worth. So which comes first? Self-love or self-respect? Perhaps the better answer is this. Self-respect teaches you how to treat yourself. Self-love teaches you why you deserve that treatment. Start with one small act today. Keep one promise to yourself. Set one healthy boundary. Stop one habit that repeatedly drains you. Take one step towards something you've been postponing. Speak to yourself with a little more patience. You don't need to become a completely different person overnight. You simply need to stop abandoning yourself in the small moments. Because the relationship you have with yourself is the one relationship you carry everywhere you go. And when you begin treating yourself with the respect you've been waiting for from everyone else, something changes. You become harder to manipulate, harder to discourage, harder to convince that you are less than you are. And eventually, you don't need to constantly ask, do they value me? Because you already know how to value yourself. If this message reached you at the right time, take a moment and ask yourself, what is one thing I can do today that shows myself I respect me? Write it in the comments. And if you found something meaningful in this video, subscribe to Simply Beautiful Motivation for more messages about confidence, self-worth, personal growth, and becoming the strongest version of yourself. Remember, you don't have to become someone else to be worthy of respect. Start by respecting the person you are becoming. I'll see you in the next video.